Good day, boys and girls. Uncle Ronald is so glad to be again with you. Now, we've ended last week. We ended with Hudson Taylor being at the doctor, and we're saying that God wanted to teach him something very special at this doctor where he was staying, where he was studying medicine. So let us hear what God wanted him to learn. Sunday mornings, just after church, Hudson Taylor would go and speak to the people about Jesus. He would go onto the streets and speak to them. And he learned there to trust Jesus, to keep him safe, because some people got angry with him, pushed him around, tore up his papers, threw some things at him, because they didn't want to hear about Jesus. But Hudson had to learn to trust Jesus to keep him safe, just like Hudson had to trust Jesus to keep him safe in China. Now Hudson also realized that God wants him to live a simple life, and that he needs to share things that he has with other people. So Hudson ate very simple meals, and all the money that he could save, he gave to the poor. But there was one thing that was very special for Hudson that God wanted him also to let go of. Now Hudson met a pretty music teacher, and she loved Jesus. And Hudson thought, oh, she is the wife, she's the perfect wife for me. And he always talked to her about going to China, speaking to the people there about Jesus. Now the time came, and he decided, but he's going to speak, he's going to ask her parents if he could marry her. And he went to them and they asked him, could I marry your daughter? And they said, yes, you may marry our daughter, but you may not go to China then anymore. And the lady also agreed with her parents. What was Hudson to do? Because he loved this pretty music teacher, and he wanted to be with her and he wanted her to be his wife. But God said, you must go to China. And she says, no, you can't go to China. What must he do? And then Hudson realized, but it is more important to be obedient to God. So he decided, but he's going to break up. They're not going to be an item anymore. And he decided to follow Jesus because he needs to go to China. What God wants him to do. But Hudson also had to learn from the doctor, because the doctor usually forgot to pay him his salary. And the doctor said, Hudson, I usually forget about paying your salary, but please at the end of the month remind me about paying your salary. But Hudson decided, no, he's not going to remind the doctor for paying his salary. No, he's going to speak to Jesus and say, please remind the doctor to give me my salary. Now it was almost time for the doctor to pay Hudson's salary. And Hudson had only about 100 rand left. And then a man came to him, and he said, please come and pray for my wife, because she is very sick and she is dying. And Hudson went with this man to his house, and there he saw it was very dirty, this room, and they looked as if they didn't have food, and they were very poor. And Hudson prayed for this man's wife so that she could get better. But as he ended his prayer, he looked around and he saw, oh, the children look so hungry. But he's only got 100 rand left in his pocket, and the doctor didn't pay the salary yet, and And if he gave the money, there won't be any money left for himself to buy food for himself. So what is he going to do? But Hudson decided he will give him this 100 rand to this person. And he gave to the person, and he said, as he went away, he felt so glad that he gave his last 100 rand. But he didn't have any money left, so he didn't have money to buy food. And he said to Jesus, Jesus, I just gave my last 100 rand to this person, to this poor man. Please provide money for me because I need to buy food the next day. How is Jesus going to answer this prayer? Now the next morning, Monday morning, he received a letter. Hudson said he usually didn't receive any letters on a Monday. But that day he did receive a letter, and as he opened the letter, there he took out gloves, and as he took out the gloves, out fell 400 rand. And Hudson was so glad because here he saw that Jesus knew about him needing money to buy food, and Jesus provided. And Hudson just praised Jesus and said thank you. And he also praised, and because he heard that this man that was so poor, that his wife got better and she was healthy again. But after even 2 weeks later, after this, him receiving the 400 rand, the doctor still didn't pay Hudson's salary. Now a day came, and it was almost time for Hudson to pay his rent, and he was praying to God and said, please God, I need this money. Remind the doctor about my salary. Now the next day, the doctor came to Hudson and said, Hudson, wasn't it already time that I paid your salary? And Hudson said, yes, you need to pay my salary. And then the doctor said, but why didn't you tell me earlier? Because just this morning I took all the money that I had and I took it to the bank and paid it into my account. I haven't got any money to give for you as your salary. Oh, and Hudson was so worried and sad and disappointed because he needed to pay his rent. That whole day, Hudson was praying to God and saying, God, I need the money, please, because I need to pay my rent. And a little bit later, almost at the end of the day, just as Hudson was almost leaving to go home, in came the doctor, and he was laughing, and he said, the funniest thing happened. My richest patient came to me and said, I need to pay you my bill. I need to give you the money. And he said it was so funny because he could have waited for the next day or day later, but the patient said, no, he needs to pay the bill now. And then the doctor said, but didn't I have to give you your salary? And then he took from the sum of the money and he gave it to Hudson. And there Hudson realized he can talk to Jesus about all his problems, his financial problems. And Jesus hears his prayers. And Hudson was thinking, now is then the time, now that I've listened and learned about this, I can go to China. But God said, no, it's not time yet for you to go to China. You still need to go to college to learn more about medicine. Now, as Hudson was studying at the college, one day he went and he touched a patient that died of a fever. And the doctor said to Hudson, you're going to get the same sickness and you're going to get this fever and you're going to die. So go home and prepare yourself to die. But Hudson said to the doctor, well, God got a special job for me to do in China. So I don't think I'm going to die, but if I'm going to die, I will be with Jesus. That is the best. And Hudson went home and he got very sick. And he thought he was going to die. But a few weeks later he got better and he could go back again to the college where he could study again medicine. Now a little while later, Hudson heard that it's now the best time to go to China. And he went to his friend that were at the missionary organization and he said to his friend, "Here I am, it is time to go to China." And his friend was so amazed because he said, "I just wrote you a letter saying that we've also heard that it's now the best time to go to China and we would like you to go now." So here were Hudson and his friend thinking the same thing, because it was the right time to go to China. It was God's time to send him. And Hudson went to his family, to his parents, and said he's going to go to China. It must have been a very special time for his parents, because they prayed, as you can remember, they prayed just before Hudson was born and said, "Jesus, if you would give us a son, we will make sure that he will go to China as a missionary." And you remember when Hudson when he was 5 years old, he said to his father, "Father, if I'm going to be, when I'm a man, I will go to China." And here Hudson was a little bit older, and here he was going to China to be a missionary. God was sending him to China. And in that time, it took a very long time to go from England to China by boat, because China was thousands and thousands of kilometers away from England. And as the boat was leaving the harbor in England, just not so long after that, they were in a big storm. And the people were thinking they're going to die here, that the ship is going to crash against the rocks. But God kept them safe, and they went on their way to China. Now later on, there was no wind to fill the ship's sails. And there was a strong stream, and this stream was taking the boat nearer and nearer to the rocks. And the captain came to Hudson and said, "Hudson, we tried everything, but we're going to be smashed against these rocks, and the boat is going to sink, and we are going to die." But Hudson looked at the captain and said, "No, there's still one thing that we can do, that we didn't do yet. And if you want to find out what that one thing is, that the one thing that they still need to do, then come back again next time."